Hiya guys, welcome back. In today's video, you are going to learn about the 10 most wicked women in history. Stay tuned. At number 1, we have Madeleine O'Hare. Throughout her life, Madeleine tried to destroy or wipe out the concept of God and Christianity. She first burst into the national stage in the early 1960s with a lawsuit against the religious exercises her son was exposed to in a Baltimore, Maryland public school. Madeleine despised religion, and she also said if people want to go to church and be crazy fools, that's their business. But I don't want them praying in parks, government, courts, and schools. The lawsuit she made in the early 1960s eventually reached the Supreme Court in 1963, and with an 8-1 ruling in her favor. The 5-year hunt for the atheist leader Madeleine O'Hare is over. A forensics expert hired by the government confirmed that bones dug up at a remote ranch were those of Madeleine and 2 of her family members. At number 2, we have Christiana Edmonds. Christiana Edmonds, born on the 3rd of October 1828, was an English murderer known as the Chocolate Cream Killer. She would buy sugary treats from a local store, poison these treats before returning them to be sold to unsuspecting members of the public. Several people became seriously ill and at least one death. She was arrested and put on trial. Edmonds was initially sentenced to death. However, this was later changed to life imprisonment. She spent the rest of her life in Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum until her death in 1907. The poison used in the sugary treats she got from a local chemist, Isaac Garrett, thinking she needed it to poison stray cats. At number 3, we have Amelia Dyer. Amelia Elizabeth Dyer was one of the most prolific serial killers in history. She murdered infants in her care over a time period of 30 years. She was a trained nurse and was widowed in 1869. She turned to baby farming. She adopted unwanted babies in exchange for money to support herself. She originally cared for the children properly while having 2 kids of her own, but whether intentionally or not, a number of them died in her care, leading to a conviction for negligence and 6 months hard labor. She then began directly murdering children she adopted, strangling some of them and disposing of the bodies to avoid attention. She was mentally unstable. She was arrested on the 4th of April 1896, tried for murder, and hanged on June 10th, 1896. At number 4, we have Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth was a Hungarian noblewoman considered serial killer. Elizabeth had been labeled by Guinness World Records as the most prolific female murderer. Her number of victims is debated. Elizabeth and 4 accomplices were accused of torturing and killing hundreds of young women between 1590 and 1610. The highest number of victims mentioned during her trial was 650, but these claims came from a servant girl named Susanna. The stories of Elizabeth's sadistic serial murders are verified by the testimony of more than 300 witnesses and survivors, as well as physical evidence. Imprisoned girls were found at the time of her arrest. At number 5, we have Dagmar Overby. Dagmar Overby was a Danish serial killer. She murdered between 9 and 25 children. One of those was her own child, during a 7-year period. She was sentenced to death on the 3rd of March 1921, but the sentence was later changed to life in prison. She was working as a professional child caretaker, caring for babies born outside of marriage. She drowned them, strangled them, or burned them to death. She died in prison on May 6, 1929, at 42 years old. Number 6, we have Aileen Wuornos. Aileen was an American serial killer and prostitute who murdered 7 men in Florida in 1989 and 1990 by shooting them at point-blank range. Wuornos claimed that her victims had hurt her or attempted to hurt her while she was servicing them, and that all of the homicides were committed in self-defense. She was convicted and sentenced to death for 6 of the murders, and was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. There is a movie made about Eileen by the name of Monster. It tells her life story from childhood until her first murder conviction. At number 7, we have Jane Toppin, also known as Jolly Jane. Jolly Jane Toppin killed at least 31 people between 1880 and 1901, but the doctors who hired her thought she was one of their best nurses. Today, psychiatrists say she was one of the most unusual serial killers in history. She had an unstable childhood. Unlike most female serial killers, she did it for the sexual thrill. As her victims lay dying, she got a powerful erotic charge from holding and caressing them. Jane couldn't resist that excitement and admitted she craved to have killed more people, helpless people, than any other man or woman who ever lived. Number 8, we have Beverly Elliott. Beverly is an English child serial killer who was convicted of murdering 4 children, attempting to murder 3 other children, and causing grievous bodily harm to a further 6 children. These crimes were committed over a period of 59 days, less than 2 months, between February and April 1991 at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital, Lincolnshire, where she was employed as a state-enrolled nurse. She is supposed to have administered large doses of insulin to at least 2 victims, and a large air bubble was found in the body of another victim. Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Number 9, we have Catherine Knight. Catherine Knight is the first Australian woman to be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She was convicted for the murder of her partner, John Price, in October 2001, and is currently imprisoned at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre in New South Wales. Knight stabbed her husband to death, skinned him, and put his skin on a meat hook, and cooked his head and parts of his body with the intention of feeding them to his children. On the kitchen stove was a human head sitting in a pot among vegetables, a frightening brew. Plated on the kitchen table were what appeared to be steaks, presented with vegetables. The steaks were from a human. In the lounge, a body that was skinned by someone with expertise. Price was stabbed 37 times. At number 10, we have Gautier Gottfried. Gautier Gottfried was arrested and sentenced to death in 1831 for murdering 15 people with arsenic over a span of 14 years. She was beheaded in front of a crowd of 35,000 people in Bremen, Germany, and was the last person to be publicly beheaded in the city. Gottfried is said to have murdered her parents, 2 husbands, a fiancé, her children, and even some of her friends.